In today's episode, I want to talk about filming in public and how not to die from embarrassment doing it. If you've watched my videos, one thing you notice is I film outside a lot. And not only do I film outside, I film on the road because I'm traveling the country with my partner right now in an RV. And a lot of times, some of the best places for us to film are outside. Our RV is small, the lighting isn't always the greatest in there, and it's also kind of fun to show you all where I am. And there's some definite challenges to filming outdoors, and I'll get into some of those in later videos, things about audio and lighting. So that's all a challenge all by itself. But there's another challenge, and I think it's actually kind of a bigger challenge and one that people don't really give enough time and attention to. That was huge for me to overcome when it comes to making films, vlogging as it were. And so this is something I've had to work a lot on personally, and it's something I've only really recently become comfortable with. So it seemed like a good time to kind of check in and tell y'all about it, because it's more comfortable to make instructional content about something when it's been a long time, it's in the past, but I think sometimes a person who has just coming to grips with it has a lot of unique insights. They haven't forgotten how difficult it was. So one of my favorite memes of all time is by this banger Twitter account called the Washington State Department of Natural Resources. And here's the tweet. Good morning to everyone except people who trample a meadow of rare flowers to get 12 likes on Instagram. Yikes. For me, there's almost this visceral cringe reaction to hearing that, because we all know that person. Vlogging and being a public person, a content creator, an influencer, if you will. It has been such a part of public life for so long, like a whole generation now going on too, that we have been inconvenienced and or annoyed by somebody like this. So I used to live in the suburb of Dallas called Addison. Now, Addison's really fun. At least the part of Addison that I lived in, Addison Circle, was walkable. There were festivals, music, live music events. There were lots of bars and restaurants. It was really kind of a hip and happening place. It was also really beautiful. Lots of trees, lots of art, public parks, you name it. It was really funky and kind of artisty and trendy for Dallas. We were actually there not because we wanted to be part of that hip crowd, but because at the time my husband worked for a company that was within walking distance from Addison Circle, and it looked like a fun place to live. I had so many cringy Instagram moments with influencers there because it was a beautiful setting and it attracted like hip young people. So for example, one night I came back from teaching at Dallas Makerspace. I used to teach social media, writing, and various other topics. I ran an entrepreneurs group there and I took pottery classes. Anyway, I was coming back one night from teaching a class and I was coming into the parking garage for my building and I couldn't get up to my floor because there was a grown woman lying across the lane in the parking garage. She was literally lying in the roadway on her side. She's modeling and doing all these poses, and her partner is standing off to the side, taking pictures with one hand and holding their infant daughter with the other. So I was like, what are you doing? I managed to get her attention. She looked at me like I was evil and ruining her life because I needed to go and park the car. I was like, hey, I need to get up to my space. I, rolled down the window and stuff. She was like really irritated because I was ruining her modeling session in the middle of a parking garage where I don't even think she lived. She must have gotten in somehow. By the time I was coming down to get the mail from my apartment building, which my apartment building from the exterior was really gorgeous. It was a very beautiful building. I came down to go get my mail from the mailboxes that were right near the front, and there was a model, again, an influencer type, that was doing a whole photo shoot with a photographer right in front of my apartment building, who was really upset with me because I ruined her shot in the building that I lived, that I rented. So yeah, I've had some experiences with influencers and content creators that are completely self-focused, self-obsessed, that are filming in public. And so when I realized that I was going on the road with my partner and thought that I'd like to document it, I had this in the back of my head. I was like, I do not want to be this cringy weirdo. I do not want to be this person that is trampling a field of rare wildflowers for 10 likes on Instagram. It was mission 1, mission 0. So for some people, failure is never starting the channel, never posting, nothing like that. For me, failure is being that annoying person, regardless of what happens to the channel. So I was very shy at first. I'm just sitting here in the morning on a nice large site. My neighbors seem to be gone for the day. It's like 11 a.m., so it's a reasonable time to be talking. This would have mortified me, this idea that I would be outside talking and potentially bothering people, like when I first started. But you know, nowadays it's no big deal. And so kind of I wanted to talk today how I got from really being incredibly terrified of being that cringy, awful, horrible person to where I am right now, which is, I think, is kind of a moderate approach. I have seen people who are much more extroverted about their vlogging, who are, you know, out the street doing the fashion shoots in the middle of busy intersections, and yay for them. Like, I get it. I am kind of in this phase where I am not nearly as mortified, and I think I'm getting more comfortable as I go along. So here are just a few tips that I have found really helpful and that I think are really easy to bring on board if you're still in that early phase where you're terrified, where you feel like you're going to die of embarrassment if you film around other people. So the first tip for being as unobtrusive as possible has to do with technology. So this guy here, the cell phone, I have a Pixel phone myself. You know, I hear a lot of the iPhones are optimized for content creation, but I was reading a statistic, and when I go to edit this video, I will fact check myself and I'll put what the actual statistic is. But you know, from my fuzzy memory, something like north of 80% of content produced online, maybe 90%, I'll put the real statistic here, is produced by cell phone. Like, you don't need super fancy cameras. You don't need the professional grade DSLR with a big poof for the wind. You don't even need a GoPro to do a lot of what you need to do. So a lot of times if I'm doing something in public, like I'm going to a restaurant and I want to film the interior, take some footage of my meal or Justin, that's on this guy. Anytime that I feel like I'm gonna be in people's way or things like that, it's so quick, it's so easy on the cell phone. People barely even notice them these days. And yeah, the quality is really good. Now, I'll tell you, for my channel, I do not have a very fancy DSLR with a poof or anything. I have this guy here, the cell phone, and what I'm talking to you on right now, which I will take my cell phone and get some footage of my actual setup, what I'm talking to you folks on. Yeah, see, here's what I got here. It's my GoPro, it's on a tripod. It's pretty simple. And obviously I've got this little lavalier mic right there. But this is kind of my high production setup. This is my maximum right now on this channel. I might get some fancier cameras later, but whatever. It's enough to have got me monetized on my first channel, and it is enough for the vast majority of people online to have a cell phone, maybe a GoPro. I have a little selfie stick. It's called the Volta. It also charges it up. That also functions as a tripod that I can show you as well. That's pretty much as fancy as I get. But yeah, if I'm in a situation where I'm going to be around a lot of people and it's conspicuous, cell phone. Definitely cell phone. Because having some footage is better than having no footage, and combining footage types can work really, really well. So speaking of my lavalier mic, that kind of brings me to my next tip, which is that voiceover is your friend. So I think one of the most conspicuous bits about vlogging in public is the audio component. Like right now I'm talking. It takes a lot more bravery, a lot more courage than just, you know, simply taking out your cell phone or your GoPro and just getting some B-roll. But what happens if you want to comment on that? So, you know, there's this idea that you have to take out your cell phone, and if you're reviewing a restaurant, you want there to be words over it that you need to talk. And then it becomes this much more conspicuous process. The neat thing is you really don't have to do that. You can take out your cell phone, you can record, and then if you want to do some vocal commentary later, you can do voiceover work. And so I say that part of being less conspicuous as you film in public is getting something that you can do voiceover work with. So I have this lavalier mic. I actually use it for my own cameras like this with you guys, and I also use it for voiceover work later in post. I get double usage out of it. The voiceover work's nice because I can just do it in the RV, and I can talk, oh, hey, you know, like, hey, look at this restaurant, or, you know, look at this park, and I can make those comments. I don't have to be walking around conspicuously with my selfie stick talking. So that's another tip. It can work really well if you're reviewing places, especially and you want to make evaluative comments, but you don't want, you know, the management knowing that you're reviewing. Awkward. But if you do want to talk while you're vlogging, especially if you want to use kind of a bigger instrument, another technique that you can do is something called the walk and talk. And I will demonstrate it for you. I'll cut to a clip of me doing it. So here's a cool technique called the walk and talk, and it is just what it sounds. You walk through an area as you're filming, and the neat thing about this is not only does it give you the dynamic background from the motion behind you, but if anything cringy happens or people are staring at you, they're also behind you. You're fleeing the scene. Kind of a neat technique. Yeah, so the walk and talk can be really useful you're at least leaving them behind you in your wake. So I don't do that one as much, but it's something I'm starting to experiment with more. Some people find it really helpful. I think it really depends on the kind of work you're doing, what your channel's about. Yeah, it really depends on your content. And the next tip is actually really simple, but I think it really bears mentioning. And when I researched a lot of these topics, I didn't find this, and I think it's really foundational and something I wish that I had known going in. So you've probably heard of exposure therapy. If you haven't, it is this idea that the more we do something, even if we're terrified of it initially, we get kind of toughened to it with the exposure. We have more anxiety and dread the more we avoid something, and the more that we expose ourselves to something, the less cringy it gets. That's kind of the idea. So if you vlog in public, even if you have some situations that are ooh, when you start out, as you do that, as you're subjected to that, and as the world doesn't end and you do fine and life moves on, you're like, oh, okay, well, I kind of built that way up in my head, didn't I? At least that's the premise. And famously, Albert Ellis, the psychologist, would prescribe shame-attacking exercises to his clients. Essentially, he would make it so his clients would feel humiliated on purpose, so they wouldn't live in the fear of that thing. So I'll tell you, I didn't set out to do exposure therapy with this necessarily, or to do shame-attacking exercises. I had it kind of happen to me. It all happened at this one park I was at. I did a review of back in Arizona. One day I was going up to this hilltop area where they had these sites that had solar panels on them. And the neat thing was that it provided shade and some respite from the heat at this RV park, and it also provided some power for the park. It was a really cool feature. I hadn't seen it anywhere before. I knew I wanted to cover it. So I took my GoPro on the stick and I prepared to go up there and get that B-roll, that silent footage, knowing that I was going to do voiceover on it later. I had a more conspicuous setup for me, but I was filming silently. So for me, it was kind of a moderate situation. I wasn't expecting anything at all. It was kind of a slow time during the day. I was just going up. I was just going to get some footage of this hill top, the sights, so that later I could go back and put the voiceover in. And I was trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. I didn't want anybody to see me. And what happened? I've actually got a clip I'll show you. But this little girl just turns and points at me, and I almost died. I'll show you the clip. Hi. Apparently, her mother was a vlogger and had done a lot of vlogging work. Also, the little girl was really interested in being a YouTuber one day, and I was mortified. I was so apologetic. I came back and I had a conversation later. I said, hey, I'm reviewing this RV park. I'm just taking some footage of the solar panel sites because they're cool. I explained what it was about. And she was like, oh, no, I'm doing it. My little girl's really interested in it, and we kind of chatted and everything. It was really pleasant, but holy cow, was I mortified when this little girl was like, Mommy, she's vlogging, like a very Emperor's New Clothes moment. I was like, yeah, I am, I guess I am. And that really helped, you know. It kind of broke the seal for me. I was like, okay. I had some other times I'd find a good place to record or do something, be way away from the hustle and bustle, like maybe it was on my own site, or I find this forested place in a walking path away from people, and someone would just kind of happen upon me because RV parks are very busy and people are always driving by, and they kind of squint and be like, what are you doing? Before the mommy, she's vlogging incident, it was easy to be like, oh gosh, I'm bothering people, and they get kind of in this anxious headspace. Cringe, I'm gonna die of embarrassment here. But after that, my husband, Justin, he said, well, you don't know, they're just kind of probably wondering what you're doing, and you've probably taken a double take at somebody that you can see is on camera. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's true. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm probably building this way up in my head, and if I'm not, then, you know, it's fine. I'm not doing anything that's too untoward. Like right now I'm talking to you, it's the middle of the day, I'm not bothering anyone. But yeah, I tell you, that one experience is exposure therapy out the wazoo, I'll tell you what, yikes. But perfectly lovely, I wasn't actually bothering anyone. And I'm sure as you do it, you'll have your own little stories. But yeah, that's how I've gotten used to it, and I'm sure I'll learn more as I go along. Anyway, it's been great talking to you, and I'll see you in the next video.